my name is Adam Compton. I work at Wave Technologies as a principal engineer focused on infrastructure and operations. And this talk is about using our neurodiversity as an asset in a mid to high level technical role where some technical leadership is expected. So technical leadership is not the same thing as management. Modern software development is collaborative and cross-functional. People are as much a part of the system as technology is, and even folks who are not managers likely have leadership responsibilities. Technical leadership is important. Being able to communicate with others and influence them is critical, both to accomplish present tasks and to advance your career. And past a certain point in your career, reconfiguring people yields substantially more benefits than reconfiguring software. Technical leadership is hard. It requires specialized skills that are difficult and time-consuming to learn. You have to communicate with people, including people you disagree with or actively dislike. You have to influence people, sometimes without them noticing. You have to understand business priorities and strategy. You have to coach and mentor juniors. And often these skills are not formally taught. They're only taught through mentorships or through social osmosis. And as we all know, neurodivergent people are extremely apt at picking up new skills through social osmosis. So technical leadership is extra hard for neurodivergent folks. Being neurodivergent presents these extra challenges on top of technical leadership already being hard. Difficulty with nonverbal communication, challenges with understanding social norms, different perspectives on social interactions, struggles with relating to neurotypical people and understanding motivations, and the neurodivergent writing style, precise and meticulous and dry, can sometimes hinder building consensus. So what should neurodivergent folks do? Find ways to turn these challenges into advantages. So the rest of my talk is going to be what I did. These are some of my neurodivergent features and experiences. Not every person has the same set of challenges. This is a case study, not a roadmap. Hopefully these examples will be useful even if they don't apply directly to your own experience. So to start, I identify strongly as someone with restricted interests, highly restricted fixated interests that are abnormal in intensity or focus. I also struggle with executive function sometimes, leading to difficulties managing time, completing tasks. And I often need to ask clarifying questions to understand the why of something before I can move on to figuring out the how. So I want to present some examples from my career of turning these challenges into advantages. One example having to do with a restricted interest is being a dogged investigator. And by this, I mean running a deep or complex problem to ground. There's lots of problems in tech that seem so intricate or arcane that most people bounce off them as too complicated to even try to understand. I find that the focus that a restricted interest provides can create the motivation to keep oneself digging when most people give up. So my example here is, at one job, we packaged deployments into a single Docker image that took about 80 minutes to create. And I spent a few months hacking away at it, coming up with tweak after tweak, shaving off a minute here or there. By the time I was done, the build time was down to 15 minutes. There wasn't any big step change. It was just little bit by little bit. And this was a transformative change in the developer experience. 80-minute builds can happen only a couple of times per day, but 15-minute builds can happen a couple of times per hour. This problem was well known and painful for everybody, but nobody else had the stamina to stick with it and keep working on it when each change was relatively insignificant. Another example I have is being what I'll call a surveyor. In my experience, and I'm sure yours as well, nothing is ever documented well enough. So coming in, exploring an unfamiliar topic, taking careful notes, and sharing what you find can be incredibly helpful. There's a psychological concept called the curse of knowledge, where people forget what it's like to not know the things they know. So documenting even the seemingly most trivial absolute core basics can provide inroads for new joiners or people changing teams. My example here is, at one job, the deployment process was almost completely undocumented, organically grown, poorly understood. I picked a single commit and traced it end to end through the entire pipeline, from the pull request being merged to the build to staging to production to all the physical machines where it was running on. I collected documentary evidence of each point and wrote everything down with all the references and links I could find. For some pieces of that process, that document was the first time they had ever been documented at all, ever. And I found people kept referring to that doc for years afterward. Even though some of the bits of it were seemingly very simple or straightforward, Going through the process of figuring everything out and putting it all in one place together was really valuable. Another example I have of turning a challenge into advantage, having to do with executive function, is what I'll call mad scientist. Neurodivergent people often have to learn tricks for managing or kickstarting executive function. And these tricks can be leveraged on things that neurotypical people struggle with too. Writers often refer to the tyranny of the blank page as a shorthand for summoning the executive function to start or continue a project. Overcoming that blank page, building a prototype, and showing the way is wildly invaluable. Going from nothing to something is a difference in kind than going from a prototype to production. And once there's something there, getting people to refine it is much easier. My example here is at one job, there was a company-wide technical migration project that my team was responsible for just a tiny corner of. There were so many interlocking dependencies and conflicts that nobody could figure out how to start. So I took my team's piece, ran it in the new environment until it broke, badgered the teams that owned the bit I needed next until they delivered it, and repeated that process until the migration was complete. I'm told that some of the executive leadership privately credited me personally with saving the entire company-wide project by being diligent and getting things off the ground there. The last example I have is asking clarifying questions, even if they might seem dumb or inappropriate. Some topics are sensitive, and neurotypical people pick up the signals not to discuss them to avoid causing conflict. But broaching these taboo topics can provide a valuable service for the company that neurotypical people might be too shy to do. And some topics seem simple enough that people worry they'll seem dumb for not knowing about them already. But often I find if I don't understand something, other people don't understand it too. So asking dumb questions is serving more people than just myself. And I should say, your mileage may vary for people who are minorities, which makes this even more important to do as an ally who doesn't struggle to overcome a presumption of incompetence and can more freely ask questions without it threatening their status. So my example here is at one job, leadership wanted to have an internal status page, similar to like a public status page, to inform the company about incidents and outages. The initial set of demands was extensive. It would have taken a lot of time and effort to implement. I played dumb and asked the leadership folks who were asking for this to explain what they really needed in great detail, following up, digging in. And it turns out they only really needed 10% of what they were initially asking for. Once we showed them the cost of delivering each piece, they settled on just the most important bits, saving the team 90% of the potential development effort and changing a likely failed project into an appropriately scoped one that could plausibly and did succeed. So my conclusion here is tech leadership is important, hard, even harder for neurodivergent folks, and not optional in mid to late career if you want to accomplish your goals or advance. Neurodivergent challenges can also be opportunities to leverage your unique situation in ways neurotypical people are not capable of. And lots of business and career advice is meant for neurotypical people and may not apply to us completely or at all. So if you're struggling, let go of what you think you ought to be doing and look at things for how they really are. I think that's one of our core skills. And we can figure out what we can do that nobody else can, and then do that. So that's the end of my talk. I'll put in a little plug. Wave Technologies does self-driving cars. If you want to help make self-driving cars a thing, hit me up. We're hiring. Thanks all.